we all
can
good?
eyeline if you want. Questions coming in.
Am I the one?
Just a little bit closer to the mics if you don't mind, thank you.
All good?
Yep.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the New South Wales State Emergency Service headquarters, where we today are reporting on the complex low system that is impacting many of the coastal areas of New South Wales. You can rest assured that the New South Wales State Emergency Service and our emergency service partners are all well prepared for this. Along with the Bureau of Meteorology, we have been tracking this very vigorous coastal complex for nearly a week now. What we've seen overnight, obviously many communities had a very sunny, fine day yesterday. Went to bed, but overnight and waking up this morning, they're finding that there are some strong winds and some significant rainfalls that are happening right across the east coast, from up in the north at Coffs Harbour, right through down to even the New South Wales Victorian border. So it's a very significant, widespread, dynamic and complex system. We do expect that we will see wind gusts in pockets of up to 125 kilometres per hour. We do expect that we will see rainfall from moderate to heavy in many areas, from 50 millimetres right through to 150 millimetres, and in some pockets isolated rainfalls of in excess of 200 millimetres. Whilst the impacts at the moment are more in the mid-north coast area, we are seeing impacts already in Sydney and Illawarra and down the coast. As this system tracks southwards, we will expect to see greater impacts from mid-afternoon today into tonight and tomorrow for the Sydney, Illawarra and South Coast areas. This system will continue to move southward and likely remain active until at least Thursday. So for communities in New South Wales along the coast, you can expect the most impacts from midday today right through tomorrow. We do expect that this system will cause potential riverine flooding from minor to moderate in some catchments. Already the SES and the Bureau of Meteorology has issued some minor flood watch warnings for areas such as Windsor, North Richmond, Camden. Because this system is so widespread, what we really need everybody in the community to do is to stay really informed, particularly for their local area. There are many ways you can do that. You can do it on the SES website, you can access the Bureau of Meteorology website. Alternatively, and importantly, please download the Hazards Near Me app and confine your watch zone to those areas where you are likely to go, so your work or your home. This means that you will get the most up-to-date, accurate information about what is happening in your local area. Whilst we are concerned about riverine flooding, the most impact from this significant rainfall will be flash flooding, and this is likely to occur anywhere from Newcastle, Sydney and in the Illawarra regions. I have with me today Gabrielle Woodhouse from the Bureau of Meteorology, who will provide a further in-depth briefing on the weather system. As I mentioned, we are really encouraging all residents along the east coast of New South Wales, and as this system moves onshore, we will see some of the areas such as the Blue Mountains start to be impacted. For those of you who haven't already, this morning is your last opportunity to be prepared. So we're encouraging people to please make sure that you are tying down any loose items. Please make sure your gutters are clean. Make sure your vehicles are not underneath trees. Please have a medical and emergency kit ready. And please have a plan and a communication plan for your family, friends and neighbours, so that you know who to contact should you have to evacuate in an emergency. To give you an update on the situation so far, the SES volunteers and our emergency service partners have been extremely active over the last 24 hours. We currently have in excess of 1,200 volunteers who are out and about responding to incidences so far, And of course, as this event continues and becomes more impactful, we expect those numbers will also grow. We have had over 900 calls into our State Operations Centre already in the last 24 hours, and over 600 incidences have been responded to by our volunteers and the volunteers and staff from our other emergency service partners. This system is a very dynamic system. It is fast moving and very different to recent events that we have seen in New South Wales. What we expect is the rain will be very rapid, it will be heavy, it will be short and sharp. Because of that, we do need everybody to really stay prepared. The New South Wales SES has deployed a number of assets right along the coast. We have high clearance vehicles in the mid-north coast, Sydney, Illawarra areas. We have deployed aerial assets so that they are available for communities should they need it on the north coast, in Sydney, and also the south coast. We will continue to monitor the developments and we will provide you with most up-to-date and accurate warnings. Please, our emergency services are prepared. What we're now asking for all of you to do is to be prepared. And I'll now hand over to Gabrielle from the Bureau of Meteorology to provide an update on the weather situation. Thank you.
Thanks. As it's been known, we have a fairly intense low pressure system that has developed off the northern parts of the New South Wales coast. We've seen that system shift further south overnight last night, and that has obviously started to bring that rainfall into the coast. Currently, we have a number of warnings in place, and that includes a severe weather warning for damaging to locally destructive winds, as well as heavy rainfall. Now, in terms of those winds, it's likely that we'll see some damaging winds of around 60 to 70 kilometres an hour and gusts of about 90 to 110 kilometres an hour. That includes across parts of the ranges, but also nearer the coast. This includes southern parts of the mid-north coast, the Hunter, Sydney, and down through the Illawarra and parts of the south coast. Now, as we start to see that low pressure system deepen further today and move a little bit further south, the threat of destructive wind gusts is going to increase. So what we're talking about here is destructive wind gusts of around 125 kilometres an hour being possible right along the coastal fringe, and we're expecting that that risk is going to shift southwards towards parts of Sydney and potentially parts of the Illawarra, even as far south as Jervis Bay or Ulladulla. Now, this system is quite dynamic and quite vigorous, and we're expecting conditions to escalate through the afternoon. What this means is that's where we're looking at that wind potential increasing, but also that threat of heavy rainfall increasing. This is most likely for areas across the Illawarra as well as parts of Sydney. This means that we have a greater flash flood risk with potential for some fairly heavy falls to develop over a short period of time, and we could see some of those falls in excess of 100 or 120 millimetres over the course of 3 to 6 hours. So that is one thing to be prepared for, but what we will see in terms of some of these conditions easing is once we start to see that low weaken and shift further offshore. So in terms of the timing of that, we are still expecting the low to move further south through tonight, and that rainfall threat will shift down towards the southern parts of the New South Wales coast, but then we start to see numerous low pressure centres within a broader area of low pressure across the Tasman Sea, and that's when we'll start to see conditions ease in New South Wales. So at this stage, the earliest that we'll see some of those warnings being cancelled from the weather side of things is going to be potentially later Wednesday or more likely on Thursday, with that wind threat persisting into Thursday. Along the waters, we also have a coastal hazard warning and hazardous surf warning. With the winds that we're expecting around this low pressure system, it's really going to increase the waves along the New South Wales coast, with significant wave heights in excess of about 5 to 6 metres expected along at least central and southern parts of the coast. And this is also going to elevate some of the sea levels, and so we're going to have a greater coastal erosion risk as a result of this system. Now, in terms of the rainfall and what that means for our river systems, we are expecting some minor flooding to develop for parts of the coastal catchments from the mid-north coast, Hunter, Sydney, Illawarra and down into the south coast. In addition to that, we could see further rises. So that includes the potential for seeing moderate flooding across parts of the Hawkesbury Nepean river system, and that is really going to depend on where we see some of those higher rainfall totals. If the rainfall spreads further inland, it's more likely to fall across the broader area of the catchment and increase that flood risk. So it's a very dynamic situation with a lot happening, with things escalating through the afternoon and overnight tonight, and hoping to see things start to ease off from later Wednesday or Thursday as this system moves away. So with that, I'll hand back.
Thanks, Gabrielle. So as you can see, it is a very dynamic and complex, widespread system. It is a system that requires our communities to really be prepared and to stay informed so that they do not put their lives or any of their family members or friends' lives at risk. I'm happy to take questions from anybody.
Just those 900 calls for assistance, what are those calls looking like, and the incidents as well? How serious are they at this stage?
So most of the incidences that we have received calls for predominantly are from the mid-north coast area, so around about 200 calls to that area, and then 100 for the Sydney area and also the Illawarra area, our southeast zone. Majority of those calls are from people who are preparing their homes, so sandbagging and the like, but we have already seen some damage with trees down that have damaged homes and vehicles.
So what in particular has happened to the residents when preparing for the homes?
So what we're asking residents to do is to make sure that their homes are very well prepared for this incident. So things like cleaning your gutters, tying down loose items or moving them inside is critical. Moving your vehicles out of the way from any projectiles or trees that could fall on them. And also making sure you have really good plans for your family and friends. That's what's very important, along with staying informed with all of the messaging coming out of the Bureau and the State Emergency Service.
The Watch and Act warning that's been put in place for most of this impacted coastal community. SES this morning on ABC radio said that residents should be prepared to evacuate. How serious is that? I mean, should people really be thinking that this is like they need to be ready to leave their homes?
Well, as Gabrielle has indicated, this is a very dynamic, complex weather system. It's very hard to predict where the rain will fall and how much rain and how intense that rain will be. So where and how much is difficult to predict, and depending on that will depend on what the river systems will do. But as we've said, flash flooding is the main high risk situation that we have at the moment. So people need to be aware of where they're going, which is why the Hazards Near Me app will really help people in that regard. Do not drive into any flooded waters. A vehicle can actually move in about 10 centimetres of water and be washed away depending on the intensity and flow of that water system. So as you move around, please make sure that you're staying aware of all the messaging and be alert as you're driving around. We note today that many of our road systems are coping with the amount of traffic that are on the roads, and we thank the community for those that can. Preferable that you do stay at home, stay indoors. That's probably the safest place to be, noting that people do have to go to work. So be careful, be alert, and monitor the situation is the best advice that we can give.
Are there any particular low-lying areas, specifically here in the Wollongong LGA, where residents need to keep a particular eye out?
Again, you need to monitor our website and also the Bureau's website so that you get up-to-date information. Again, depending on where the rain falls and the intensity of that rain, we are more likely in Wollongong to see flash flooding, more so than any river systems or creek systems flooding. But you do need to be alert to that as well.
You mentioned aerial assets. What are they? How can they be used, and where are they on the south coast?
Currently we have aerial assets that are deployed in the mid-north coast, Sydney, and also we have them in Albion here on the south coast. Those aerial assets are used predominantly at the moment for rescue situations. So if people become isolated or trapped in floodwaters, that's when we would use our aerial assets. As the situation dies down, if places have isolation and cannot get out, for example, to get medical supplies, we would use those aerial assets to ensure that we can reach them with medical supplies.
Do you mean helicopters?
That recently
go out to those areas that have been significantly impacted this year. That mid-north coast area has got 4 emergency declarations already this year. We do expect the system, as I mentioned, to be very different though to the previous ones. So we are unlikely, although possible, to see some riverine flooding. Again, it really depends on where this system goes and where the rainfall falls and the amount of rain that does fall in that particular system. But again, those communities that have experienced these significant weather events over the past few months, they know how to prepare, and we know that they're all preparing because we can tell how many sandbags, for example, are being collected and by people. So we're very grateful to the communities who are actually preparing for this weather event, because that is what will keep them and their family and friends safe.
Thanks guys, I'll cut it there. Thank you.
Thank you.